Have you ever found yourself shivering at the thought of being surrounded by people? This sensation, this fear that creeps into your mind, is not an isolated phenomenon. It's known as social anxiety, a fear of social situations, of people. And it's more common than you might think. It's a natural response, a primal instinct, a protective mechanism that has been with us since the dawn of our species. Yet this fear can often become a hindrance, a barrier to our personal and professional growth. It can prevent us from forming meaningful connections, from seizing opportunities, from truly reaching our potential. Now let's turn to the wisdom of the Buddha, who once said, "The whole secret of existence is to have no fear." The Buddha emphasizes the importance of understanding our fears, of facing them head-on. Instead of running away, we often fear what we do not understand. But what if we could change our perspective? Imagine being a monk, living in seclusion, far from the hustle and bustle of the world. Meet our protagonist, a monk who chose a life of solitude not out of spiritual pursuit, but due to an overwhelming fear of people. He lived atop a mountain, far from society, his days filled with silence and his nights with contemplation. He was not always like this. Once he was a part of the world, embraced its noise, its chaos. But fear, as it often does, crept in. He began to see the world as a menacing place, people as sources of pain and disappointment. So he retreated, seeking refuge in the tranquility of isolation. Yet even in the serene embrace of solitude, he found no peace. His fear of people didn't subside, it merely morphed into a fear of his own thoughts and perceptions. He realized that his fear was not of the world, but of the judgments he cast upon it. In his search for solace, he turned to the teachings of Buddha. Buddha's wisdom told him that fear is born from attachment. Our fear of people, of judgment, of rejection is tied to our desire for acceptance, our need to be loved, to belong. Slowly he started to understand. He began to see that his fear was a manifestation of his own insecurities, his own judgments. His fear was not of people, but of his own perceptions, his own expectations, and so he began his journey of self-discovery. He meditated, he introspected, he questioned. He faced his fears not with resistance, but with acceptance. He understood that to overcome his fear, he had to first accept it, observe it, understand its roots. Gradually, his fear started to dissipate. He started seeing people not as threats, but as fellow travelers on this journey of life. He found comfort in their company, warmth in their words, and peace in their presence. The monk learned that the fear he held was not of people, but of his own perceptions and judgments. He understood that fear, like all emotions, is not an external force, but a creation of our own mind. And like all creations of the mind, it can be understood, it can be managed, and ultimately, it can be overcome. Buddha once said, "The mind is everything what you think, you become." This profound wisdom holds the key to understanding our fears, including the fear of people. See, our mind is a powerful tool that shapes our reality. Our thoughts, perceptions, and beliefs construct the world we live in. If we harbor fear, it's because our minds have given power to that fear. Now let's apply this wisdom to the fear of people. If we perceive others as threats, we become anxious and fearful. But here's the transformative part. We have the power to change our thoughts. By shifting our mindset and altering our perceptions, we can transform our fear into understanding and acceptance. We can learn to see people not as threats, but as fellow beings. On this journey of life, we can choose to replace fear with empathy, understanding, and compassion. Imagine if, like the monk, we could transform our fear into understanding and acceptance. Overcoming fear is not about avoiding it, but about understanding it. This is a key lesson that we've explored today. Fear of people is a common experience, one that can be paralyzing, but it doesn't have to be. We learned this through the story of the reclusive monk. Despite his isolation, he found wisdom and courage within himself to face his fear and reintegrate with society. We also drew from the timeless wisdom of Buddha. His teachings guide us to recognize that fear is created within our minds and can be conquered the same way. This is a powerful reminder to not let fear control our lives. The importance of changing our perceptions to overcome fear cannot be overstated. We must remember that fear is not a monster lurking in the shadows, but a challenge that can be understood and conquered. Remember, the fear of people is not a monster to be fought, but a challenge to be understood and overcome. Thanks for watching AM Poor Motivation and Stories. Stay blessed.